Hello and welcome to the BloodStream Podcast, a show serving the greater bleeding disorders community, brought to you by Believe Limited and BloodStream Media, and made possible thanks to our presenting sponsor, Takeda. I am your patient advocate and host, Patrick James Lynch.
And I'm your healthcare advocate, nonprofit nerd, and your other host, Amy Board, reminding you to please speak with a healthcare professional before making any treatment decisions.
What a great idea. On today's show, we have Patty Weltin from Beyond the Diagnosis, an art exhibit that you're not going to want to miss hearing about. And on our gene therapy segment, Hanna sits down with genetic counselor Kaylee Dollarshell. They're talking about how families make sense of gene therapy, the science, the feelings, and the big decisions that come with it. We've got all of that and more on today's episode. Welcome to BloodStream.
Listeners, as always, thank you for joining us today. And if you like what you hear, please hit that subscribe button.
Subscribe.
Wherever you get those podcasts. And also you can follow us and watch us on social media. We're actually on the social medias.
We're on the medias. And I want to remind you, dear listeners, that the BloodStream Podcast is made possible by our presenting sponsor, Takeda. Yes, that's right. Takeda. Takeda's got this website, bleedingdisorders.com, where you can learn all about Takeda's resources for and commitment to the bleeding disorders community. Takeda believes in a world, Amy, free of bleeds.
Amazing.
Don't want bleeds.
No bleeds.
And they are dedicated more than ever in their efforts to offer a wide range of programs and support to help patients throughout their treatment journey, wherever on that journey they may be. You can learn more by simply visiting bleedingdisorders.com. One more time, just for the sake of it, bleedingdisorders.com. And for their founding and ongoing support of the BloodStream Podcast, I would just like to say thanks, Takeda.
Thank you, Takeda!
So what are you doing? Oh my goodness. We get through the intro and you're about to trash the studio.
I don't know if anybody heard that, but I literally kicked our table and it like wobbled.
Wow. I didn't even know sound was possible.
I didn't even know that thing was there.
Well, I'll tell you this. I'm glad you didn't kick me over because I'm on crutches today. That's my transition.
Okay. It was amazing.
And I just needed to share this with you. You know, right now I've got my hair pulled up. I'm looking a little more profesh.
I think you look profesh.
I appreciate it. Wearing my second best black t-shirt.
Second best.
I had an appointment last week. I'm on the crutches. The hair's down. And the guy's coming up from behind me. It's the second floor of a walk-up, too. So he definitely was surprised to see old crutchy me. I turn around. He's a 6-foot guy, muscly guy, and he looks at me and he goes, "Who's this injured caveman?" Oh! So I would just like it known that from now on, my moniker is Injured Caveman. That's what I'm trying to present to the world.
I'll say it. That tracks.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Other than having no outdoors skills whatsoever and being dead to rights if I was ever placed inside a cave for more than about 3.5, 4 hours, totally tracks.
Amazing.
Totally tracks other than that.
I will say, we haven't had an update on your ankle in a bit. How does it feel?
It feels great. Yeah. So where are we now? I'm a little more than 6 weeks out. I'm on cast number 2, a walking cast.
Oh.
So I can start putting a little toe touch, a little pressure on the right foot, bringing it back into swing. Had x-rays a couple days ago. It's looking good, but just in that process. So November 24th, the Monday of Thanksgiving week, is when the cast comes off. Okay. So that's my count. Not that I'm counting, but it's 35 days away from right now.
100% counting down.
Yeah, 35 days, give or take.
And tell everybody how the left ankle is holding up. Because the left ankle was the problem, really. Was the
big problem ankle. And I was saying to Amy off mic earlier today that I've put the left ankle through as many tests in the last 6 weeks because I'm hopping around. It's just bearing more weight. I'm heavier than I want to be, so it's bearing more weight. And all of that, it's doing fantastic. The left ankle's this is the biggest test it's ever had, and it's doing phenomenal. So I'm even more excited for what it means when the cast comes off of the right leg and I can walk around the world. I was just watching people today on the drive-in, walking around. Yeah. And I was like, how nice.
How nice. No, seriously, our Hanna Berry, who you'll hear from later in the episode, she actually broke her finger in a sports injury. She plays flag football here in LA because she's amazing. And she's like, you just don't even think about it. This little finger that you think is not even that big of a deal, but just walking around.
Having a finger. Yeah. These things that you just take for granted.
You take 35 days. Here we go.
35 days. So don't worry, you'll hear about it on the show when the day comes. I'll be I'll be jumping for joy. Maybe literally. We'll find out.
Literally, we'll just have him standing the entire time.
Well, speaking of Hanna Berry, I think we're about to hear from her, aren't we?
Heck yeah. So Hanna actually is sitting down with genetic counselor Kaylee Dollarshell, which Patrick mentioned earlier. Kaylee actually is from Colorado's Hemophilia and Thrombosis Center, which is my old stomping grounds, and Hanna's old stomping grounds as well. Kaylee is a genetic counselor, and they're talking today about how families make sense of gene therapy. You wouldn't think maybe that a genetic counselor would have that big of an influence on the decision with gene therapy, but actually it's quite a lovely synergy, if you will.
You know, it's interesting that, and I'm sorry to break your flow, but I often found the genetic counselor at my treatment center was the person I had some of the longest conversations with during my comp visits growing up. And frankly, it was just because she was who she was.
Yeah.
You know, and I was interested in the science, but then the way she would explain it, the way she would ask me questions, tie it to the science, it was really interesting. So similarly, I wouldn't think in a silo that the genetic counselor, hematologist, nurse, physical therapist, the genetic counselor, for me too, played a huge role. So I'm sorry to break your flow. I just wanted to add that in.
No, absolutely. I think that's the whole gist of it. Hanna loved this conversation. She talks about it all the time. So excited for you guys to get to hear it. Let's go on to Hanna.
What's up, BloodStream listeners? It's your girl, Hanna, and we are back with you for another episode of Gene Therapy, A Whole New World. Today, we are exploring the power of genetic counseling in the age of gene therapy, how it helps individuals and families make sense of complex information, helps them weigh their options, and feel empowered in their decision making. Joining us today is Kaylee Dollarshell, a hematology genetic counselor at the University of Colorado's Hemophilia and Thrombosis Center and Children's Hospital in Colorado. Kaylee works closely with families, navigating hereditary conditions, helping them understand both the physical and emotional layers of that genetic diagnosis. Though, before we dive in, here is a quick word from our sponsor. It's a Whole New World Gene Therapy segment brought to you by CSL Behring and their Hemophilia B gene therapy treatment. To learn more about gene therapy, hear patient stories, and view additional support resources, visit beyondhemb.com or download B Support wherever you get your apps for more information and to manage your treatment journey. Gene therapy has opened a new world of possibilities, but with that comes a lot of questions. Genetic counseling often serves as the bridge between cutting-edge science and the everyday realities that families make tough decisions. Genetic counseling often serves as the bridge between cutting-edge science and everyday realities of families making tough decisions. Let's start at the beginning, because not everyone listening might know what genetic counseling actually involves or how it fits into a conversation about gene therapy.
Genetic counseling has been around for many decades now, but I think we are starting to be maybe more of a household name that people are more familiar with. Some maybe not, but genetic counselors work all over the place. I mean, we have genetic counselors that work in clinic settings. We have genetic counselors that now work for labs or advocacy groups or insurance companies. Really, there's a lot of different roles, but I would definitely say at the heart of genetic counseling is providing support and education to families who have various types of genetic disorders.
That range of roles is so fascinating, and it sounds, no matter the setting, a key part of the work is translation. You're helping families not only understand the science behind gene therapy, but also what it could mean for their day-to-day lives. So that makes me wonder, how do people actually connect with a genetic counselor? Is it something they can just set up themselves?
If you're looking for genetic counseling, you're going to need a referral from a provider to see a genetic counselor, but we're kind of in a bunch of different areas now. So you may attend a clinic that already has access to a genetic counselor, and they may meet you during an appointment, or your doctor can put in a referral to see a genetic counselor. If your clinic doesn't have direct access to genetic counseling, there's now a few online platforms that your doc can refer you to.
So when a person is on this journey, it is important to receive a referral to speak with a genetic counselor. As genetic counseling becomes more accessible in different settings, it's clear how it plays such a critical role. And when a family does start thinking about gene therapy, I imagine there's a mix of science and emotions that comes with it. What does that conversation look like?
Of course, there's lots of conversations that are going to be happening with your provider team and lots of other medical staff members. But specifically, genetic counselors, I think, can play a role in understanding what is the underlying genetic driver of your condition. And when we are starting to have some of these new therapies that we as providers and healthcare members are very excited to present to people, we also need to really understand that some of these communities, it's always this excitement. We have a new treatment for XYZ. Oh, we're so excited to present it to families. And I think just taking some of that historical information and being sensitive that when we're discussing these therapies, that there may be families that are like, hey, we're not really interested in generation one of a particular treatment. Let's wait for a little bit and make sure we can kind of gain trust and understanding of it. We also have families that are very excited for some of these new treatments because their families went through some really drastic and hardships that these new treatments can hopefully prevent in their children and themselves.
So it's not just about what's available. It's about when a family is ready to engage. And that brings us to a bigger idea. How do providers support people in finding treatments that align with their life, not just what's newest or most exciting?
I think that our goal at our center and our clinics, and I think we share this with most clinics, is that we're people before patients. And I think we want to make sure that we support individuals in whatever they want to do with their life. And most of that usually revolves around trying to find a treatment that keeps them comfortable, keeps them safe, and hopefully keeps them out of our clinic as much as possible. And I think that the exciting thing about gene therapy and all of these emerging treatments is that it's hopefully allowing patients to be a person before a patient and living their life in a safe manner, but living their life the way they want to, and hopefully not having their condition impact their daily life nearly as much as we.
Understanding the science behind a diagnosis is one thing, but connecting that science to someone's everyday experience is where genetic counseling really can shine. Kaylee had mentioned earlier that these conversations can be tough, and I keep thinking about how emotional this journey must be for some families. What role does that play in your work?
So, I specifically often work with individuals that have certain types of blood disorders, whether it be bleeding disorders or otherwise. And I think it's really nice to start from the basics of what genetic change do you have that's causing your condition, and what is gene therapy going to do? Because I think a lot of times it's really important to understand what we are trying to give the body to kind of make up for your condition. So, for example, in hemophilia A that we work with quite a bit, you often are born with a genetic change in your hemophilia A gene, that factor VIII gene. And what gene therapies are most often doing now, although there's different approaches to gene therapies, but some of the most common gene therapies are, we know that your factor VIII, your F8 gene in hemophilia A is not working 100%. And gene therapy at this point is trying to deliver a healthy working copy of that factor VIII gene for your body to use as kind of a template rather than the one that's not working quite as well. So I think it's really helpful for families to sit down and understand why we're doing gene therapy and the approach that gene therapy is taking.
That's such an important point. You're not just replacing the treatment, you're giving the body something it's missing. It sounds like a big part of Kaylee's job is helping families step back and see the whole picture, not just the science, but the emotional reality of what might change with gene therapy.
There's definitely some hard conversations that come with genetic counseling, but I really hope at the end of the day that families leave feeling more empowered, that they understand their own genetics and understand how their treatment or journey is impacted by that. And I don't know, it's just trying to put, it's your DNA.
Exactly. It's about feeling empowered, not just following a treatment plan, but actively participating in your own health journey. As we get ready to wrap up, I'd love to hear Kaylee's take on this. What would you say to someone who's just starting to think about gene therapy, whether it's a patient, a parent, or even a sibling?
I think regardless of the genetic or condition that you're working with in general, But I think it's really important to understand what a family's situation has been. How has their relationship with their condition been? Is it something that they've lived with their condition and it's been something that has not impacted their life in a really detrimental way, and they perceive different treatments maybe differently than families that have been really impacted in the past negatively by certain treatments and by their condition? And just understanding every family is going to come with their historical background, and making sure that families are comfortable as we talk through these treatments, of being able to ask questions and be able to share their piece and be comfortable being honest with their providers on their thoughts on new treatment.
That perspective is so important. Recognizing the history of bleeding disorders and the hardships most have went through is huge. Acknowledging that individual family history with their condition and treatment can really shape how they view new options. As we look ahead, there's both incredible potential and a real need for continued learning. With treatments like gene therapy, we're not just talking about a single solution. We're talking about the possibility of real life-changing options for families who may have faced tough roads in the past.
I think that there's so much promise, but I think there's also a lot of learning that still has to happen. And I think we're getting lots of really good information, but there's going to probably be different tweaks and iterations to each generation as they come out with these different treatments. I think that the most exciting piece that comes with these new treatment options like gene therapy, again, are just giving families different options, and especially families that have had difficulties with certain treatments in the past. It just, again, gives one more option that may be an option that then keeps them off of treatment or keeps them at minimal treatment moving forward, that drastically changes their lifestyle.
Talking with Kaylee really reminded me this work is about people first. It's about creating space for honest conversations, tough questions, and whatever path really makes sense for the family. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. We hope today's episode helped you see why genetic counseling is such a crucial part of the gene therapy journey, where science meets heart and decisions are made with confidence. Until next time, it's your girl Hannah, signing off.
So thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Kaylee. That was great. And all genetic counselors, hip, hip, hooray.
Genetic counselors unite.
Unite. Okay, who do we got next? PGL.
Next up, Patty Weltin. So she is the founder of Beyond the Diagnosis, which unites art and science to bridge the knowledge gap in healthcare, to promote inclusivity, and to raise awareness for children living with life-altering diseases. Artists paint portraits of these children, and the portraits then become part of a traveling exhibit for medical schools, research institutes, hospitals, galleries, and museums. You heard Amy and I talk a little bit on the last episode. I first saw the gallery at a New England Hemophilia Association event pre-COVID, BC, before COVID, and the new BC. And it was amazing. Yeah. And we talked about Ford, Effie Park's son, a member of the BloodStream Media family, is one of the portraits that's been painted. They're extraordinary portraits, and what they're doing is even more important. And we're going to hear from Patty to learn more about it right now. Patty Weltin is the CEO and founder of Beyond the Diagnosis, an organization that unites art and science to bridge the knowledge gap in healthcare, promote inclusivity, and raise awareness for children living with life-altering diseases. Artists paint portraits of these children. The portraits then become part of a traveling exhibit for medical schools, research institutes, hospitals, galleries, and museums. I have seen the gallery at hemophilia meetings across the years, and it's a treat today to finally get a chance to speak to Patty. Patty, welcome to BloodStream.
Thank you so much.
You've said that Beyond the Diagnosis started as a way to give visibility to children with rare diseases, which of course makes good sense and is needed. But can you take us back to the moment that you knew this project had to exist and what it's become that you never could have imagined?
Oh, this is going to be easy. So many things it's become. First of all, I started it because my daughters have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. I think like most people in this space or advocating have some connection, personal connection to it. And for me, it's my daughters. It took 18 years to get my oldest daughter, diagnosed correctly. And that was frustrating. I mean, that was really, and I think you understand that having a diagnosis is better than having no diagnosis. even if it's
Absolutely.
bad. We want to know. You feel much more helpless if there's no diagnosis. So one of my board members' daughter came to me and she said, I have to paint a portrait for school. Can I do a kid with a rare disease? And the lights just went off. And I thought, because I always thought the disconnect started in medical school. We need to be in medical schools. This is where and even at a certain year, I used to lecture at medical schools. They become disconnected from the patient, elevated in their, attitude toward the patient at a certain, I think, probably third year med students. And I wanted to humanize the patient. I wanted the soon to be doctors to be able to see us as humans and not diagnoses. And so we thought, we'll put a little art exhibit together. And I put out a call for art in Rhode Island. And we ended up getting 17 portraits. And our first venue was Brown University. So, and I live in Rhode Island, if you can't tell by my accent. So, we went to Brown and it was a huge success. I mean, it was with the students, with everybody that saw it, was just a huge success. And so, we kept growing. Well, let's let it grow. And I think the thing that most surprised me, I never thought we'd leave New England. Our next venue was Harvard Medical, and they put out a press release that we were coming. And, when Harvard talks, everybody listens. So they put out a press release, and Stat News did a story on us. Boston Globe did a print story, Today.com, and then CBS Sunday Morning called. And I thought, who is this? I kept thinking it was somebody I knew, that it was a joke, that they were tricking me. So, and from after that, it was just, I think it was 7 million viewers on CBS Sunday Morning at the time. And
Wow.
it just exploded. I mean, the way the website was set up, most of the people in the exhibit in the beginning were just my friends' kids, fellow advocates. I'd call them up and say, hey, do you want us to paint your kids? Or local artists. And, we were getting people wanted to sign up to be an artist or a patient. So we had to set up the website to accept applications through the website because there were so many. It was no longer calling up your friend to have their kid, send in a photo. It was so much bigger.
No, and I think now, and correct me if this is not up to date, but over 150 portraits and counting. I'm curious. So each one represents a unique individual, a unique story, but there must be certain themes that have emerged across rare disease experiences. And I'm wondering if there's anything that has stayed with you or surprised you in particular.
Well, I think that as a parent and what I see in this community is just a lack of understanding and a lot of isolation. Like, I think a lot of us feel misunderstood and isolated. And I think the exhibit goes a long way in changing that, and that, like, saying rare disease, as soon as you say it, people kind of glaze over. So just saying it is terrible, but they don't glaze over when they look at these portraits. They look closer, and I mean, we're just at Harvard in February, and, the feedback was amazing. We have little QR codes on the portrait tags so that they can learn more about the child and the disease, and they were all doing it. They're all taking advantage of that, which just was really moving. It's really, really powerful to see it in person. You've seen it in person, right?
I have, yeah. I saw it at the first time anyway was at the hemophilia, the New England Hemophilia Foundation had their annual meeting in Rhode Island, maybe in 2018.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
17 or 18. And that was the first time I saw it. And I remember seeing the portrait of Ford, Effie Park's child, as one of them. And that's actually what grabbed my eye. And I was like, oh, this is beyond the diagnosis. It's because I'd heard of it, but that was the first time I saw it.
Yeah, the portrait of Ford was painted by a girl with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, what my kids have. It was funny too, because her mother I probably shouldn't say this, but her mother called me and said, my daughter's an artist. And I'm like, oh my God, everybody thinks their kid is an artist. And then she sent her work and oh my God, she was very young when she painted Ford. So I think she might have still been in high school, which is,
Wow.
she is a gift. She was born to paint. She's done several paintings for us. Ford was our cover that year. Like as soon as I saw it, I'm like, this is the cover. It's just phenomenal. Just so many of these people the artists that donated are so talented.
So obviously art is a huge piece of this, but there's an advocacy component, there's an education component, there's an awareness building component. And that leads me to want to ask you, what role do you believe art plays in changing people's hearts and minds, and maybe in particular within the medical practice?
I think the most important thing is doing right now is humanizing us, seeing us as not just a disease, but somebody's child, somebody's brother, somebody's sister. They just don't see that these kids bring joy to people's lives. They don't see that. They just see the suffering end of it. They don't see the other. Ford, he's the best. These kids are amazing. They're all lively and smiling and that's what we capture, and that's what they need to see. I think everybody needs, not just the medical community. I think everybody needs to see that just because you're in your wheelchair doesn't mean you don't have anything to offer.
You mentioned that great story about all those who are taking advantage of the QR codes to learn about the stories behind the individuals. Are there any other stories from particular installations, exhibits that either surprised you or taught you something about beyond the diagnosis that you hadn't previously thought about?
It actually, I have a story that taught me something about our community, and it has to do with hemophilia. So I got an email from Neha, and Rich texted me, emailed me, and he said, oh, we want to have you at it was in New Hampshire the year before that. The 2008 to the Rhode Island, I think it was in New Hampshire. And he said, we want to have you have the exhibit at our conference. And I said, we don't have a portrait for hemophilia. He said, we don't care. We want these kids. It was overwhelming. We want these kids. And I said, why don't we do a portrait for hemophilia, and we can unveil it at your conference, which is what we did, Mason and Miles. For me to meet the family and the artists is remarkable. That's my favorite part of all of this, is getting to meet everybody involved. It's not often we have the artists at unveilings, but when we have the kids there and the artists, it's magic. It's just absolutely magical. So yeah, that was huge. And then they would take it every year. They're like, oh, we want you to come. And I was like, and then other disease-specific, foundations started asking to have it at their conferences, and not just taking the portrait of the child that represented the disease they wanted, all of these kids, which I don't know if you know this, but I also work in tethered cord syndrome.
No, I didn't know that.
I'm actually published in the American Journal of Medical Genetics, co-first author, because I started working on this art exhibit has led me to make connections to other rare diseases that no one knew that they had tethered cord. And I was like, wow. So, the connection, that learning from other diseases, there's so many ways to make connections in this space. And I think it's important that everybody's engaged with all of it. And that's why I think it's important for us to do as many diseases as possible, and for people to have that for them as well, to see that as well. It's huge. We started, I'm working with one of the leading doctors in the world. We started the Tethered Cord Research Initiative for rare diseases because of the art exhibit. Like, I would have never made these connections. I remember I was putting together, we in the catalogs, we put a biography for the parents. We want to know about the child. What are their likes? What are their dislikes? What are they, what's fun for them? And then we put a section for the disease. And I was reading one disease, and I'm like, this is tethered cord. And I called the parent that runs the nonprofit, and I said, does your child have this? And she said, yeah. I said, this could be that your kids have tethered cord. I mean, and it's pretty easily remedied with surgery. It sounds scary because it's your spinal cord, but it's real. My daughter's had it. Was one of the easier surgeries she's had. But so, I mean, I think that it benefits everybody to be working together. And that's why the whole NEHA experience was so shocking to me. Like, they didn't even have hemophilia and they still wanted it. That was so heartwarming, and that was really emotional.
Well, and it doesn't surprise me, knowing Rich and knowing that Rich, like me, grew up in an environment where camp was so important, and camps with kids that had not just hemophilia, but other bleeding disorders, other serious illnesses. We do have a lot more in common when it comes to lived experience and how these things disrupt our lives, turn them on their heads. I know so many stories of women in particular who, you mentioned it took one of your daughters, I think you said 18 years to get a diagnosis.
18 years.
And how often I hear stories like that of women, again, in particular with bleeding disorders. But as you well know, Patty, rare diseases may individually be rare and disparate and spread out, but in totality, we're 1 in 10 people.
Right.
How many constituencies, I'm a broken record on this, but how many constituencies are 1 in 10 people? We are large, and if we're networked and connected, then there are opportunities like the story you just told to say, hey, I actually know something about, are you experiencing X, Y, and Z? Because if so, you may want to check out that if we're not networking with one another, if we stay in our silos as advocates, scientifically, medically, we lose opportunity to spread information and help people receive timely diagnosis, timely treatment, and a better quality of life.
100%. Absolutely. And I think that this is important to this. This exhibit is important to that movement of, we're here, this is what we are, this is who we are, and getting people outside the medical community engaged. It's hard to get Congress engaged, and I know I've been to this Capitol and telling my story, telling my kid's story. I spoke in front of, the state legislature, and, they glazed over them. They even paying attention to me. I remember watching people giving their testimony, and they were reading it, and everybody was on their phone. And I immediately, I was going to read mine. And I said, oh, no, I'm not. You're going to look me in the eye. I'm going to look at you, and you're going to have to look back at me. And I said, it's my story. I know what it is. I know my kid's story. So I'm not going to read it. And that was my first speaking engagement ever. Like, the first time I ever spoke in front of someone publicly.
Wow.
And yeah, I was really scared. And then I was just angry because they weren't paying attention.
When was that?
That was when I first started in 2011.
And if you had to ballpark it, how many speaking engagements have you had since?
I think over 100.
I mean, I just keep the power of art. As you said, this exhibit has something to do with how we make a difference. Obviously, if the stories that you've just told are emblematic of just that. I want to touch base on something with the time we have left that you brought up earlier, and I just want to hear a little bit more about, and that's the families themselves. You mentioned the magic that takes place when the artist and the families get to meet each other. I want to hear about, what does it mean, that moment of recognition, to be seen in that type of a way? What do families tell you? What are some of the regular refrains that you hear?
I mean, I can tell a story about what happens is the exhibit. And to me, I think it's a testament to what this means to the community. When we put this together, we knew we were dealing diseases that were fatal. So we said, when or if a child passes, we will retire the portrait to the family. And the first time it happened, they said, I don't want it. I said, what? And they said, no, we don't want it. And no one has asked for the portrait back because their child lives on in the exhibit and travels. I mean, we lost a couple of kids this year, and one of the kids, the portrait is going to Paris, and I let the mom know. I'm like, I mean, we don't call them, like, I don't call Ford's portrait. It's Ford. Like, oh, Ford's going here. Ford's going to Harvard. That's the way we talk about these portraits. They're like family to me. I actually called Effie once and I said, listen, I have 2 places that Ford could be. You could be here or be here. Where do you want him to go? And she said, you do what's best. You're his second mom. I was like, okay.
Wow.
So that was really, to me, very powerful. And, in a community that's so rarely seen, and for us like to be on the Jumbotron or to be at Harvard and now to go to Paris and we were at the Rochester Art Museum, there during the months of January, February, and March, we're usually completely booked. There are no portraits left. I have to turn down venues because we just don't have enough portraits to go. It's going to happen this year too. So, I think that speaks to people are so moved by it. People, when it goes somewhere, when it's time to come back, they're like, people are saying, no, don't take them down. If they want it to stay. But, plus they have to travel around. But I think that was interesting too for to see the reaction when it was time to go. Even in industry, we've visited different corporate buildings and even the people working there are like, we don't want them to go, So it's really touching. And I think it's, we were just at the bio convention and I think it's important that they, see us. And there was a guy that kept coming up to me and saying, I'm a pediatrician and I just think this is so amazing. Like, this is so powerful. And I was, I totally agree with you. And he was so humble. And it turned out like he was this really big deal in his country, like a huge deal. But he was so humble and wonderful and so, just approachable. He wasn't what I expected when I found out actually who he was. But so that was rewarding too, to know that someone in his position of power was so moved by this, and also somebody who was a pediatrician.
Well, as a member of the rare disease community, as the father of a young girl who also has a rare disease, I want to thank you for what you're doing. I'm also a huge believer in the arts and in storytelling and what you're wrangling and what you stuck to growing over the years. Patty was teasing me when I gave her too much credit, apparently, before we recorded, because she's not the artist. Well, you're doing all the wrangling. Without you, there's none of it. So you get the credit. Thank you. And where can people go to learn more?
Our website, we're everywhere because it's so visual. We're the website, beyondthediagnosis.org, and everything else is Beyond the Diagnosis. We're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, we're on TikTok. So because it's visual, it belongs everywhere. It fits everywhere. In kind of social media world, So it's a lot of work, but I got my daughter to help me.
Well, yeah, and thank you for doing it. So please check out Beyond the Diagnosis. We'll have links in the program notes as well. And Patty, thanks for joining me today on BloodStream.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you again, Patty and Kaylee, for joining the program today. Thank you, Hanna Berry, for your contributions. Thanks as well to our presenting sponsor, Takeda, bleedingdisorders.com for more. And a thank you to CSL Behring for presenting our gene therapy segment. We could not produce this show without your support, and we are grateful for it. All right, Bordeaux, next episode comes out November 14th. What are the listeners going to hear on that one?
Well, we're going to hear from the founder of a kind of a grassroots movement, if you will. It's called the Red Ink Project. We're going to hear from Elsa and Anne, her mother, Elsa Kendall and Anne Kendall, about kind of what the genesis was. I believe the idea started for her in high school.
That's correct, yeah.
And she was diagnosed with hemophilia or von Willebrand's disease?
Hemophilia.
Anyway, we found her kind of in our web of social media things, very interested in her story, and we're so excited we got her on the program. So you're going to hear her story next month, November 14th.
November 14th. All right, folks. And with that, that is all for this episode. Be sure to subscribe to the BloodStream Podcast wherever you listen to have the next episode delivered to you the moment it goes live.
And loyal listeners, as always, you can email us at mailbag@bloodstreammedia.com to inquire about our casting opportunities or to share your story. We would love to hear from you. You can also reach out and find us on social. We're at BloodStream Media, Believe Limited, Patrick James Lynch, Amy Ward.
There it is. No excuses. Come find us. Tell us your story. Tell us what you want to hear about. I am your host, Patrick James Lynch.
And I am your other host, Amy Board.
And until next time, take self-care of yourself. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.